Welcome to this webinar on our Traffic Safety Culture Pooled Fund, review of Phase 1 accomplishments, and an invitation to join Phase 2. This webinar is being recorded. My name is Sue Sillick, and I am the Research Manager at the Montana Department of Transportation. I will begin with an introduction presentation. We'll hold questions until after all presentations. However, please feel free to add questions to your question box at any time. So today I will give you a brief introduction. We'll follow with information on the current Phase 1 pooled fund and with an invitation to join the second phase of this pooled fund, which will run federal fiscal year 2020 to 2024. And finally, we'll conclude with a Q&A session. Montana is the lead for this pooled fund study. It was actually initiated by our director. The current Phase 1 study runs from federal fiscal year 2015 through this federal fiscal year 2019. There's been quite a bit of research on the engineering side of safety and some done on the human factor side, but much less on traffic safety culture. Yet to bring us to zero, traffic safety culture needs to be understood better to improve traffic safety. This is the purpose of our Traffic Safety Culture Pooled Fund. On this slide, I've included the website links to the current pooled fund and Montana's website for this pooled fund. We have 14 states participating in this pooled fund, and they are shown here on the map. One representative from each funding partner sits on the board overseeing the pooled fund. Anyone can contribute to pooled funds, not just state DOTs and federal highway. If you have a way to get money to us, you can participate. So I serve as the project manager for this pooled fund. We are also partnering with the Center for Health and Safety Culture at Montana State University for help with managing the pooled fund and to conduct research. For the Phase 1 pooled fund, we are expecting to have a little over $1.2 million transferred over the 5 years that it's been active. In addition to the board, I maintain a distribution list of interested parties. We all meet quarterly via web meeting. We also hold an in-person meeting every other year, or that has been the case for this first phase. This in-person meeting replaces one of the web meetings. There are two groups, the board and the interested parties. Most communication go to both the board and interested parties, such as meeting information, project and deliverable review requests. Interested parties are encouraged to be as active as they would like to be. Some have even joined us at our in-person meetings. And then some communications just go to the board, those requiring decisions. We will have completed 10 projects by the time this Phase 1 is done. 2 are complete. 7 are active, and 1 is still pending a contract. And our next speaker will talk more about these projects. So this slide just shows the rest of the active and pending projects. Well, the pooled fund runs through this federal fiscal year, which will end September 30th of this year. The research will not be finished at that time. So we'll be running both pooled funds, both phases, Phase 1 and 2, until all the research is completed for the Phase 1, at which point we'll close the Phase 1 project. So there are many benefits to participating in this pooled fund. Some of them listed here, including improving traffic safety, leveraging funds, increased knowledge and practical tools for you to use in your agency, a seat at the table to determine which projects we will conduct, networking, and learning about other projects and initiatives. For the next phase, Phase 2, I've included the URL here for that phase. We are currently seeking partners. To date, we have 5 states who've let us know that they will be helping to fund Phase 2, but of course we're looking for additional funding and participants. At our last in-person meeting in Phase 1, we developed a list of 6 high priority topics. These 6 topics will be contracted in phase one, one of the things we've talked about for phase two is developing a research roadmap, which could be done by this pooled fund, or it could be done through other funding, such as through the TRB-managed Behavioral Traffic Safety Cooperative Research Program, or BITSCREP. Ultimately, the funding partners will determine the projects to be funded in phase two. So join us and help set the goals. So with that, we're going to transfer over to our next speaker, who's going to be talking more about the projects that we will be conducting in phase one. Nick Ward is our speaker. He is the director of the Center for Health and Safety Culture.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to spend some time talking about what we've done with research so far in this first phase of the pool fund. To start with, I'll just introduce the Center for Health and Safety Culture. We're the research partner in this project. We're a center that focuses on social and cultural factors that relate to the decision to behave in a safe or unsafe way. And we do a lot of work in communities, looking at their health and safety issues, help them understand their local culture, and work with them to help create strategies that transform that culture to sustain the health and safety that is desired by that community. So a few things I wanted to cover in the presentation, talk a bit about the purpose of this pool fund, talk about a key definition for this project, namely a definition that we use for traffic safety culture. Then talk briefly about a model which helps us operationalize that definition, a model that helps us create theory-based rational surveys and also helps guide us with the analysis of data. I'll then talk about some research projects that we've completed, some research projects that are currently underway, and then some supplemental projects that help create some tools to help agencies and communities work with traffic safety culture. To start with, just to focus for a moment on the purpose for the pool fund, essentially two purposes. One is to create a long-term partnership which will involve a portfolio of research projects that evolve over time based on the interests of the participants. And that research is intended to support the development and delivery of toolkits that can be used by communities and agencies to work with the concept of traffic safety culture as part of the traffic safety plans, and specifically to develop tools that help the transformation of traffic safety culture in alignment with the various visions for zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries that different communities and states may have. The key definition for us, of course, is what do we mean by traffic safety culture? It's important when working together to have a shared language around the key concepts, and for us, traffic safety is the key concept that we're working with. And this is the definition that we're currently working with within the project. Traffic safety culture being the shared values, assumptions, and beliefs that are shared among groups of road users and stakeholders that influence our decisions to behave or act in ways that affect traffic safety. Now, there's a couple of key components of this definition I want to focus on for a moment. The first is that we're defining traffic safety culture as the shared assumptions and beliefs and values that groups of people may have. We're separating that from the behaviors that may result from having those shared values, assumptions, and beliefs. So we're very much focusing on the way people think about traffic safety and their choices of behaviors, not the behaviors themselves. The behaviors are a result of traffic safety culture. In this definition, we also focus on the shared values, assumptions, and beliefs not only of road users, but also within the agencies and organizations of stakeholder groups that have some responsibility or interest in traffic safety. So we're looking not only at road user culture, but also the culture internal to those agencies and organizations. Another important part of this definition is that we're talking about culture and how it influences decisions. We're talking about choice and decision-making here. Specifically, we're talking about deliberate behaviors, not those that are perhaps accidental or habitual. There are ones that are done deliberately. So we're really focusing on the role of culture and how it influences the decision-making process. And lastly, obviously, we're not focusing on culture in its broadest sense. We're focusing just on those aspects of culture that have some impact on traffic safety. So let's spend some time talking about what we mean by values, assumptions, and beliefs, given that they are central to our definition and how we approach work in this project. When we're talking about deliberate behaviors, ones that result from choice, we're really focusing on intention and willingness. And those are two slightly different concepts. Intention is a choice that's planned. It's something we plan to do, a behavior we plan to engage in a future anticipated situation, such as realizing that one may have to speed tomorrow after work to get home in time for a family event. In those situations, we have decided to engage the behavior because we know a situation is going to arise in the future where we can commit that behavior. Willingness is a bit different. It doesn't anticipate a future event. It's just more of an openness or a favorability toward a certain situation or behavior. So an example, we may not plan to drive after having a beer after work tomorrow, but we find ourselves tomorrow at lunch with colleagues and some of them do have a beer and you decide, well, I'm there too, I might as well have one and decide to drive home afterwards. So that's more of an openness to a situation that wasn't expected. So in this work, we're really focusing on intention and willingness behind risk behaviors, such as wearing a seatbelt, driving distracted, or driving impaired, and trying to understand how traffic safety culture influences our intention, our planned behaviors, or our willingness, our openness to behavior in the future. I mentioned beliefs, assumptions, and values. Let's spend a moment trying to understand what we mean by those terms. Beliefs are basically what we think are the consequences, expectations, or constraints we have on our behaviors. So some examples of beliefs that we may have is, this would be good for me to do. That's a behavioral belief. It's a belief that there's some positive outcome of performing the behavior. Another example, my friends disapprove when I do it. We call that a normative belief because it's a belief about what other people do or what other people expect us to do. And lastly, if I wanted to, I could do it, which is a control belief, a belief about our ability to engage and control and perform that particular behavior. And all of these different kinds of beliefs are part of our belief system, which influence our decisions to engage in a behavior or not. Values is another concept we spoke about. Values are those things that are important to a person. They are often the goals behind the choice of a particular behavior. And here we have some examples of statements that indicate certain kinds of goals. Protecting my family is important to me implies that protection of family is important, that family is important, and the goal of their behavioral choices is to ensure the safety and protection of their family. Other examples here may be that completing a project on time and on budget is important, and another example, safety is important. So often when we're looking at culture, we're looking at what are the values within that group and how are those various values prioritized, because often there may be competing values or competing goals. And last week we spoke about assumptions. Assumptions aren't about a behavior per se, they're about assumptions are beliefs about the system in which the behavior occurs. So what is the definition of the system in which a behavior may occur? What are the rules of engagement in the system where behaviors may occur? And here are some examples of assumptions around the transportation system. We may assume that drivers are responsible for their own behavior because that's what makes the system work. Or we may assume that laws must be enforced in order for them to be effective. Again, another belief about what makes the operation of a system effective. So when we're looking at defining and measuring traffic safety culture, we focus on values, beliefs, and assumptions, and how they then influence our intention and willingness to engage in behaviors that are either safe or unsafe. I mentioned we have a model. The model is a way of operationalizing the definition, about putting some structure and predicted pathways between values, assumptions, and beliefs, and the behaviors we're trying to understand. Here's a very simple model. The simple model includes the values and assumptions, which influence the kinds of beliefs we have, and those beliefs influence our willingness and intention to behave. values, assumptions, and beliefs, as well as willingness and intention, form our overall belief system. And this is the reason why we define traffic safety culture this way, because we begin to look at those elements of the belief system, see what they are and how they may be changed in order that we can change the outcome, which is the behavior. In actuality, we use a much more complete and complicated model, which has much more detail about what we mean by beliefs within this model and how the different elements relate to each other. We use this model to create surveys. So, for example, for each box in this model, we will identify and create multiple items in the survey to measure that box. And then in the analysis, we then look to test the hypotheses represented by the arrows in these boxes. Do the predicted pathways actually materialize in the data after we've completed the survey? Using that definition and that model, as Sue mentioned, we've completed a number of projects and we're currently engaged in several others. Just want to give you a quick overview of those so that you can go to the site and look at the information in more detail if you'd like to. Talking first about some of the research projects we've finished, there's two primary research projects we've finished. One was driving after cannabis use. This was a national survey of cannabis users and non-cannabis users to understand three fundamental questions. First of all, how does traffic safety culture differ between users and non-users of cannabis regarding the choice to decide and drive after using cannabis? As part of that, we also wanted to understand what elements, what factors in traffic safety culture correlated with the decision to drive under the influence of cannabis. What aspects of traffic safety culture would predict greater intention and willingness to do this behavior? The logic was, if we understood those particular factors, we could create strategies to minimize those factors so there was less willingness and intention to engage in that behavior. And lastly, this particular project also looked to see if there were differences in traffic safety culture between states that did have legalized recreational use laws and those that did not. The link here at the bottom will take you to the safety project report page of the Pool Fund project, where you can examine these reports online. The second project that's been completed looked at this notion of traffic safety citizenship. It comes from work in occupational safety, where the idea is that you want to create a culture where employees don't watch out for themselves in terms of safety and don't only do what their job requires them to do for safety. You want them to actually take the sort of extra wider perspective of helping others be safe and doing things outside of their job role to ensure that safety is maintained within the workplace. So here the idea is, what can we do to look at traffic safety culture from the perspective of not just ensuring that people wear their seatbelt and don't drink and drive, but how can we look at traffic safety culture as a way of motivating, encouraging people to help other people wear their seatbelt and encourage other people not to drink and drive. So we began with this project looking at this as an approach to traffic safety, to not just focus on the people engaging in the risky behavior, but to align and create allies amongst those who are safe to help others be safe too. We began by asking questions about how prevalent is such pro-social behavior in the U.S. using a national survey. Which aspects of traffic safety culture, what values, attitudes, and beliefs tend to be associated with increased willingness to engage in such behavior? And what may we be able to do specifically around this kind of behavior with respect to seatbelt use and texting while driving? What kinds of traffic safety culture do we need to create whereby passengers, for example, will encourage the drivers to wear their seatbelt and not text and drive, and creating a culture whereby drivers will encourage their passengers to wear their seatbelts? So both these projects are completed and the final reports are available at this website. We're also engaging in a number of current projects which are underway right now. we're just wrapping up a project that was looking at understanding the culture within law enforcement about their actions to promote traffic safety. We're currently starting a project to understand what kinds of traffic safety messaging can cause people to react negatively, to avoid the message, and indeed do the opposite. We're also engaging a project to understand what is the appropriate method to use to evaluate a strategy that's based on traffic safety culture. An important part of traffic safety culture strategy, as with any traffic safety strategy, is to evaluate the process and outcome. And yet there's not much known about how you would do that appropriately for a traffic safety culture-based strategy. And we're also beginning soon another project on how to grow engaged driving. What kind of culture is important, not just to avoid being distracted, but to be deliberately attentive while driving. And the last thing I wanted to mention are some supplemental projects which were essentially creating the toolkits based on the research that will be available to different stakeholder groups so they can begin to work with this concept of traffic safety culture. And here are a couple of examples of these supplemental projects which have produced toolkits to be used by stakeholder groups. The first one, which is currently being developed, is called the Traffic Safety Culture Primer. And this primer is comprised of a number of tools. The first is the primer itself, and it's a document which provides an overview of what is meant by traffic safety culture, some examples of using traffic safety culture as a basis for developing strategies, and some suggested actions that organizations and stakeholder groups can use to begin exploring traffic safety culture as part of their own mission to reduce traffic safety fatalities and serious injuries. To help use that primer, we've also created an animated video which can be shown to convey some of the key points in the primer, but also motivate people to spend some time with that primer and to see how it could be beneficial to their mission. We've also got a PowerPoint presentation deck that people can use to communicate to their peers and colleagues within their organization and to their communities about traffic safety culture and why it's an important concept. And finally, there's a poster included too, which summarizes information that can be put up within organizations and around the community to help convey the important parts of the primer for a wider audience. We've got a very similar concept for the proactive traffic safety primer, which is based around the initial concept I discussed with you about traffic safety citizenship. So it's got the primer, which provides some easy-to-read detail about the concept, some examples of how you could use this proactive concept as an approach to traffic safety, and some actions you can take within your organization to become more familiar and more engaged with this concept. Then it has some supporting tools, again, a PowerPoint presentation deck, and also a conversation guide to help generate questions to help begin conversations as to why this approach may be beneficial to the mission of an organization. Most recently, as part of the work that was done earlier in the project on driving under the influence of cannabis, we've created a toolkit around the key information available across multiple areas of science and literature that talk about the effects of cannabis on driving, the potential effects of legalization laws on traffic safety outcomes related to cannabis. And this is all being put together in a report that tries to integrate the complexity of information out there on cannabis and driving into a single document. It gives some background as to why this is a difficult topic, the key information, the key conclusions from the literature, and some overall conclusions about what the effects might be of legalizing recreational cannabis use on traffic safety. As part of that toolkit, there's also talking points that sort of summarize the key points in the report that people can use to have conversations within their organizations and communities. Again, a PowerPoint presentation deck for people to talk about the issue of driving under the influence of cannabis and the potential role of laws. A poster that summarizes the key points and can be used to give access to a wider audience. And also some infographics that summarize the reports in a very intuitive, easy way to interpret and share within the community and organizations. And with that, I will let us move on to the next presenter.
Great, thank you, Nick. Our next presenter is John Tomlinson. He is the Idaho Transportation Department Highway Safety Manager. John.
Great, Sue. Thank you very much. Yeah, like Sue said, I'm John Tomlinson. I've been with the Office of Highway Safety as the manager for about 3.5 years. And I just kind of wanted to go over a few reasons why we love to participate in this pooled fund. The first thing from Idaho's perspective is the collaboration and kind of that one voice working together. So when we talk to the public about traffic safety, we want to have that same message across the board. And so what we're doing here with this pooled fund is we're looking at coming together as states to look for innovative approaches based on the research, based on these projects that we're proposing, and then coming up with best practices, coming up with toolkits, these ideas that are going to help us. Because once we come up with those ideas, that's obviously going to benefit us as highway safety professionals, and that's going to benefit the general public. So that's why, you know, we feel here in Idaho that this pooled fund is so impactful. We're able to pull all these resources together. What we've done just in the last year here in Idaho, we have rebranded our Office of Highway Safety, and it's based on the participation that we've had in this pooled fund and focusing on that positive traffic safety culture. Basically, you know, we start with the individual making a conscious decision and then passing that on to their family, coworkers, friends, and then ultimately to our community in the state. And we have received a lot of positive feedback from our rebrand because what we're doing is focusing on that positive traffic safety culture. Also, another big reason why we love this pooled fund, in Idaho, we're a minimum apportionment state. So we honestly don't get very much funding. We don't have the funding availability to participate and to come up with these big projects. And so we love this pooled fund because what we're able to do, we're able to have skin in the game, but be able to work together with all these other states and with the center to be able to get important research projects that are going to benefit the public here in Idaho and nationwide. And so, you know, these are opportunities that we wouldn't normally have with just sticking to ourselves here in Idaho and trying to come up with our own research projects. And then, you know, so there's the states that receive a lot of money, and so, you know, the question comes up, well, what's in it for me? You know, because we can probably do some of these research projects. Again, what I feel is so beneficial with this type of a pooled fund is the collaboration with the other states, getting that different perspective on highway safety, how things are being done, you know, East Coast versus West Coast, Central versus South, you know, and being able to have that perspective. It's also, you know, people as they go through states, you know, they're going to travel. So, you know, they may live in a very large state, and as we see in Idaho, a lot are coming from California and are moving here to Idaho, and so they're going to be driving in these rural areas across the country. So again, we've loved participating this previous and hope to be able to participate in this next 5 years, second phase, based on the collaboration, the positive focus that the center has, and being able to hear the ideas of what other states are doing is why we participate and why we love doing this pooled fund. So with that, I will turn it back over to Sue.
Great, thank you, John. And I'll just remind you that if you do have questions, please put them into the questions box. Next, we'll go to Audrey. Okay, there we go. And Audrey is our Grants Bureau Chief here at the Montana Department of Transportation. Audrey?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Audrey Allums. As Sue said, I'm the Grants Bureau Chief in the Planning Division at MDT. Just a little background, I've spent a number of years in highway traffic safety. In fact, I was just thinking about that. At this point, I've been in and out of traffic safety in different positions for about 30 years. I also had the opportunity to spend 3 years as the chairman of the BitScript Research Committee for GHSA. So I've had a lot of chances to spend time with research and spend time with highway traffic safety. And I am here to echo exactly what John Tomlinson said about the traffic safety culture pool-funded project and why we really want to participate on it and why it's really beneficial. I do have some specific examples for you today, but I do want to just reiterate that whole collaboration that's so important when we're all talking about highway traffic safety and how we see things in our state, and talking about a project that is pretty comprehensive, and traffic safety culture is a little bit hard to wrap your mind around, but it is something that's really important. One of the things that we know about research, by the way, and especially in some of the research, is it's a bit of a glacier. It takes a long time to get from point A to point B. And you've noticed in Sue's presentation and in Nick's that we've worked on 10 projects in 5 years. Some of them are complete, some we're still working on, but that has been refreshing and amazing to me, to be able to start to finish projects and actually get some workable information, use the information in our strategies, and I can't say enough about that because that's been one of the key things for us. The other nice thing about the traffic safety culture is during these projects, a lot of people talk to me about research and say, you know, I don't understand it, I don't get what they want from me, and this really does try to get to the how, the why, the what it is, why you should use it, you know, how to use it. And especially these last primers and different things that we're working on, I think are going to be real beneficial. Sue, if you want to go to the next slide. As we all know, we're expected to do evidence-based programs. We're supposed to have data-driven strategies. And sometimes as highway traffic safety professionals or people in those close fields, we have a gut feeling about something, but unless we have the information that we need to provide that, we really can't show that. And that's been really nice about some of the surveys that they've been able to complete in a very timely manner, including our support for strategies. You know, for this one, we were looking at media and what's going to be effective in our conversations with people, in our media with people. You know, we've talked about, you know, buckle up or you're going to get pulled over. We've talked about you're going to die. But we're looking at a strategy right now just to support that family support of asking your family to buckle up. And when they did this survey, it was very clear that a family rule is important to people, that everybody buckles up. So we've had a chance to use that in our strategies when we're talking about different strategies for media. Next slide. Additionally, part of that survey and something that Nick had talked about is kind of talking about those descriptive norms. How often did most drivers or passengers ask their fellow people to wear a seatbelt? Well, if your driver is a family member, they ask a lot more. Or as a passenger, a family member, they ask a lot more. So we were able to use some of this information to kind of help hone in our strategies about what we should be saying to people and the kind of messages that we should provide. Next. We've actually had a chance to look at several different things, and Montana is a medical marijuana state. We don't have recreational, but we're currently developing some new messaging around medical marijuana just to make sure people understand impairment is impairment. And this is an interesting piece of information. Of course, we all in our guts feel that we know that people hang around with people that are like them, you know, and so when it says my friends think it's okay to, if I drove after using marijuana, maybe we need to address the issue of maybe they don't. So we're looking at these different ways to have effective messaging using some of the information that we've received. Next one. That also includes, you know, the strategies that we use on even developing the media. I mean, should we talk about it's never okay, or should we use an example of, hey, did you drive under the influence of cannabis when you were picking up your kids or running errands, it gives us a chance to look at different reactions that people have. So I think these surveys have been very interesting. Next slide. I call this one "and sometimes" because all of us as highway traffic safety professionals end up with this gut feeling about things, or we hear rumors about stuff, and we know that it's probably happening out there, but we don't have the opportunity to have that data that absolutely shows that this is happening. So in one of the surveys, this is the law enforcement survey, we had definitely heard that, one of the problems is prosecution. It gave us a chance to really dig down a little bit more. And as you can see, the question is, traffic safety enforcement efforts are a waste of time because prosecutors and judges will not follow through. There was actually a pretty high percentage, if you look at the neither agree or disagree or agree, of people that popped out to us as a concern. And we did move on that, actually. We did get some more information from people specifically. We've actually worked more with prosecutors and have been using this information at the state level to hopefully remove some of those feelings. So, you have an opportunity, we have an opportunity at the Traffic Safety Culture, as I said, to kind of collaborate with states, try some new and interesting things, and actually have research turned around in a pretty timely manner, and that's pretty exciting to me. It also takes a big picture when you're looking at traffic safety culture, and it takes a big picture when you're looking at zero deaths and towards zero deaths. So this collaborative effort with a pool fund, I think is something that's really worthwhile for states to participate in. And really, as John said, financially, it's a pretty small investment for a pretty big return. So, we're pretty excited about it here. And that's all I have today.
Great. Thank you, Audrey. We will now move to questions. And I cannot see the questions at this point. Kelly, do we have any questions?
I haven't seen any come in.
Okay. Maybe what I'll do while you guys are thinking about questions you might have is I will show the Traffic Safety Culture, our website for this project. And please, if you have questions, take the time to type them in while I'm showing these websites. So this is our project, our page for our Traffic Safety Culture Pooled Fund with some basic information, work plans for each of the years that the Pooled Fund has been in effect, and then links to projects. Some of them complete that have final products, and then some of them in progress that have progress and proposal and just a project overview. So each project that is contracted has information here. And then we also have what's called a LibGuide, a resources collection on traffic safety culture that we maintain here out of the Montana Department of Transportation. And my internet is going really slow. So in the meantime, maybe it's working now, better now. In the meantime, I will go to the Pooled Fund on the current Traffic Safety Culture project. And if you're familiar with the Pooled Fund website shows the states that are contributing and what they're contributing each year. This is just the background information. And then we have all of the progress reporting for the Pooled Fund. That's a requirement of Federal Highway and must be posted on this website. And then we also do have the solicitation for Phase 2 out there, and shows the states that have contributed so far, just some basic information. And I'll note that we have received approval for waiving the match for SPR Part B funds. And so you can use 100% SPR, State Planning and Research. If you don't know what that is and you're with a state agency, talk to your research manager. They will know what that is. Here is the Traffic Safety Culture resource guide. Again, it's called a LibGuide. There are a number of these LibGuides with just various information on the topic of interest, and you can get 2 other LibGuides as well that way. It's sponsored by the Western Transportation Knowledge Network. So as new information is available, then it's posted under the appropriate tabs for this resources guide. Kelly, at this point, do we have any questions?
Yep. Somebody just asked how many attendees joined today.
Okay.
Can you see?
And can you answer that?
Oh, yep. We had the highest number we had was 42 people, but right now we have 39.
Great, thank you. So what I'll do is I will send out the slides or a link to the slides in the recording to not only those who attended, but those who maybe registered and last minute couldn't attend. If you have any questions, at that point you'll have my contact information if you don't already have it. And at that point, then, if you have questions afterwards, you get to thinking a day or 2 later, hey, I thought I should have asked about this. It's not too late. You can still ask, pop me an email or give me a call, and we can talk about it. So we look forward to your consideration in participating in this pooled fund, and which will begin October 1st of this year. Okay, well, I think I've exhausted about what I can talk about. So again, look forward to follow-up, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for your attendance. Look forward to hearing from you.